Welcome to Litquake, San Francisco's literary festival. I'm Jack Bulwer from Litquake, and our festival runs from October 7th through the 23rd, online and in person. All the details are at litquake.org. Tonight, we are honored to be able to present Danny Trejo and Donal Logue in conversation with Joe Loya. Danny Trejo is one of Hollywood's most recognizable, prolific, and beloved character actors. With over 400 credits on IMDb, he has been called the most killed man in movie history. He has been shot, stabbed, blown up, hanged, decapitated, chopped up, melted into goo, and eaten by both a badger and an anaconda. He was also raised in an abusive home in Southern California, where he struggled with heroin addiction and stints in some of the country's most notorious prisons, including San Quentin and Folsom, before starring in such classic films as Heat, From Dusk Till Dawn, and Machete. In his new memoir, Trejo, My Life of Crime, Redemption, and Hollywood, co-written with Donal Logue, Danny reveals how he managed the horrors of prison, rebuilt himself after finding sobriety and spirituality in solitary confinement, and how he draws inspiration from the adrenaline-fueled robbing heists of his past for the film roles that have made him a household name. He speaks everywhere, from prison yards to NPR, inspiring countless others on their own road to recovery and redemption. Danny is also a successful restaurateur and is expanding his Trejo's Tacos franchise nationwide. You can find out more details at dannytrejo.com. Danny will be in conversation with his co-author here, Donal Logue. Donal was raised on the Mexican border in Nogales, Arizona, Calexico, and El Centro, California. He is a veteran of over 70 Hollywood films and hundreds of television episodes, and won the Sundance Film Festival's Grand Jury Prize for Outstanding Acting for the film The Tao of Steve. Great film. He stays busy between creative projects with his trucking and hardwood companies based in Southern Oregon. And finally, our interlocutor, interviewer for today, a good friend of Litquake, Joe Loya, is an essayist, screenwriter, actor, and author of the memoir, The Man Who Outgrew His Prison Cell, Confessions of a Bank Robber. Joe was co-host of the popular podcast Bank Robber Diaries, and he founded Watcha Media Productions in the middle of the pandemic, and now has several podcasts and TV and film projects in development. A few things before we begin. Don't forget to follow Litquake on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for the latest updates. You can also support Danny and Donal today by buying a signed copy of their book, Trejo, at Marcus Books, located in Oakland, California. They have limited copies of signed books, so check it out, Marcus Books. We also ask for your support of the Litquake organization to allow us to bring you these events largely for free. It's a precarious time for artists and nonprofits, and if you believe in keeping literature a key component of San Francisco's cultural landscape, please consider dropping us a few bucks. Every bit helps. We accept donations on Venmo, PayPal, or directly at litquake.org. So let's get on with it. Please welcome Danny, Donal, and Joe.
Hey guys, it's really it's a privilege to meet you both. You know, I'm a big fan, so I'm just gonna try not to fanboy too much. But also as a writer, I gotta tell you, I was hugely impressed by this book. It's inspiring, and goddamn, Danny, your life is so, it's like tough to imagine somebody fitting so much in it. The spiritual journey is as powerful as any book I've ever read, any story I've heard. It's a wonderful story. But more importantly, you know, for the purposes of Litquake, it's a really, really well-written book. Just a page turner. It delves into, it's honest. And I think people want to read things that are honest. That's why nonfiction sells more than fiction. And it's just brutally honest. And it's a wonderful journey. So I want to congratulate you both for this book. Well done.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Joe. I can't wait to read your book.
The Man Who Outgrew His Prison Cell.
Nice.
Yeah, back in the late 80s, I robbed 30 banks and went to prison and the feds for it and did time with some people that Danny did who migrated over to the feds from the state. And I was at Lompoc Penitentiary where it's funny, your book is so interesting also personally, because there's so many ways in which it's not like every Mexican has the same, every Mexican ex-con has the same path or whatever, but like my mother's favorite actor was Tyrone Power, like your mother, right? I mean, it's like I was reading that. I put that in my memoir, right? Like Quasimodo. I referenced Quasimodo in my memoir. Like I love Charles Laughton's performance, right? And Sanctuary.
Wow.
So like, there's all these moments where I'm reading the book and I'm like, wow, this is interesting. And you know, I lived in Burbank for a while. Went to Burroughs High School and Luther Burbank. So like our paths were weird that way, right? Though I was born in East LA, and like your dad was from Fort Montevilla, right? So my dad was from Loya, Montevilla, and I was, what's that?
My dad was from 38.
Oh wait, 38. Who was Fort?
No, my mom was from Fort.
Oh, your mom was from Fort. That's right. Okay. But yeah, I was born in the old Montevilla housing projects, the ones that aren't even there anymore, right? So like, there's just it was fun to read because you know there's all these ways in which there's certain things track with us. But the Tyrone Power one was the one I was like, wow, what are the odds, right? Anyway, so before we talk about the book, what's interesting to me, fascinating to me, and I don't even really know how to start talking about this, is one, while I'm reading this, I'm hearing your voice, Dan. Like I'm reading it and I'm hearing your voice. And I'm wondering, how the hell does Donal write your voice? Like that seamlessness of it blows me, like it's already a way of writing that I don't understand. So can you guys first tell me how you decided to partner on it, and then I want to hear how you actually did it. How does that work like that? That's just so fascinating to me.
Joe, I should say I kind of forced the situation a little bit because I had a friend who's a lit agent, and she said at some point years ago, you know, your friend Danny should write a book and you should help him with it, right? And so I was like, Danny, I think we should do a book, you know, and get a proposal together, and then Danny can take it away, because this was something, right, Danny, that had been proposed to you many times in the past.
You know, it was funny because like for the past 10, 15 years, people have been saying, you should write a book, man. You were in prison, now you're Hollywood, blah, blah. And that wasn't like my life. It was just really kind of weird, but and so I tried it a couple of times, but the biggest problem was that, you know, people would change a word. It's weird. It would, like, you know, instead of saying a lot of them, they'd say prolific, you know, or something. I don't know. It would just be a different word. And we were really some smart people, but they were kind of college bred, weren't from the streets. I knew Donal since 1991.
30 years.
You know, I knew he was, Calexico, come on, that's still part of Mexico. And they don't even have streets, it's just alleys. And so it was like, when we talked, we became friends, and then he knew me. I mean, you know, we did 1991. And the first chapter or so we wrote, Maeve, my kid's mom, who's known me for 40 years, she kind of said, you know, I feel like I'm talking to you. And that was it. You know, that was when he kept, yeah, come on, let's do it. We did it, and I trusted him implicitly because, you know, I mean, our paths had crossed, and we've just been, can guys be like soulmates without like being married? I mean,
of course they can.
I mean, we were just
that's what a road dog is.
Yeah, you know, like my best friend, you know what I mean? And in Hollywood, you know, you have best friends for like 6 weeks. You know, and then all of a sudden you never see, and you are no camarada, and then you move. So there's only out of, you know, I've been in this business since 1985, and I probably got only 3 best friends that are in Hollywood.
And one of them wrote this book with you.
Yeah, one of them, that's it. You know what I mean? And Donal is like, you know, one of the best friends I've ever had. So when we got together, and when Maeve said this was it was It was just written in stone. And then we didn't, this wasn't, we still got 2,000 pages that we haven't, but we, this one just came out like me. And like I said, it's, my kid's mom says, sounds like I'm talking to you.
I swear. And that's why I feel like we're going to get we're going to be able to hear some of it. I think for the festival, we're going to have some of you reading some of it, because it's so strong. I think people need to hear that prologue. I got to tell you, I think it's important to have strong beginnings of books. You want to grab them, and there's a lot of options out there. You want to keep coming back. That prologue is as good an opening. It's almost like when you write a movie, you want to grab them at the beginning. Yeah. That prologue is so good about the dual praying for the dog, and then when the men come in and they all have to go and fight. And after, I'm not want to talk a lot about what that is. I want people to read it, but I tell you, as soon as I read that prologue, I literally put the book down. I called a friend and said, "Man, this thing grabbed me by the balls, man. It's going to take me for a ride." I can tell you right now, it was really, really brilliant. And then once I went through it, I said, "Okay, let me ask you a couple of questions." So, because I wrote my memoir, and I also worked for Walden House. I don't know if you remember Walden House, Danny. Do you remember Walden House at all? They went into prisons and did reentry, stuff like that. Yeah. So I was on the board for a minute, and then for a year I did it. And so I would go and do. And I want to tell you also real quick, I didn't have addiction. So I'm really impressed by anybody who did reentry without it. It was so hard to do it and not have an addiction. I don't know how anybody with addiction does it. And so working for Walden House really introduced me to the whole recovery and sobriety. It was just really intense. But all that to say, since I wrote the memoir, people have come to me. And the biggest problem people have with writing memoir that I've discovered over the years is that they're afraid to write stories of people who are still alive. They're afraid to offend them. They're afraid that whatever, right? I had an issue with my dad, and it ended up kind of badly. He said when I got out of prison, he gave me permission to write. And then when I wrote, he got pissed off with what I wrote, and so I understand that. But I'm wondering, when you approached it, did you have any reticence about man, I don't know how I'm going to write about this person because they're still alive? Was there ever any of that? How did you confront that?
Well, you know what? It was funny because when we first started writing, and Maeve, the mother of my children, who knows me better than anybody, and we've known each other. She helped me raise my other boy, Danny boy, and we got him when he was 5, I guess. And so probably about 35 years, she's, known me for a long time. And she kind of said, wait a minute, your mom's missing in this, your dad's missing. And I kind of said, well, that's their story, and I remember her saying, Dan, why do you think you've been married 4 times? Why do you think you had children with 2 women you weren't married to? Why do you think you didn't let me go to the store by myself when we were together? It's like you have absolutely no trust for any woman, and women that have adored you, you still end up pushing them. And I think that, wait a minute. So I went back to Donal, and he goes, yeah, this is absolutely, and this is, and he understood more about me, and I think when I did this, I never expected I do the Comic-Cons, where you go and sign,
You bet.
And I've had guys come up and said, man, my dad had an affair and it broke our family, and my mom, and these guys that you would never think were confessing to this stuff to another guy. And it's like, I said, you know what, we're only as sick as our secrets, Holmes. That's the stuff you got to get out. So I thank Donal and I thank May for really letting me, giving me the strength really to let a lot of that stuff go,
But it's easy, right? Easy for me to say, because if I was about to write about my life, I'd be like, whoa, no, I can't. And so it was brave of Danny and brilliant of Maeve. And Joe, unlike you, I'm sure we had it was much more of a team effort putting together a memoir, because Maeve, Gilbert, Danny's son, there were so many people who were such key component contributors besides Michelle Herrera Mulligan, the brilliant editor, a friend of mine named Hillary Lifton, who is just like a ghost whispering genius about, you don't make it so linear, drop here, here, here. But, Danny's honesty was, because when I hear other people's story, I'm not going to, when he would tell me those stories about his childhood, though it was very different, that's what I recognized. Those were the similarities I recognized in the struggles that I went through emotionally and otherwise as a kid. And I'm like, that's how, that's something Danny instinctually knows. And I do think that we found this weird, super amazing way to synthesize voice, but I will never, it's Danny's voice. The reason I think the voice is so spot on in this book is because we actually worked on it so much for 2 years that I had all the recordings of Danny talking. I transcribed everything. And when in doubt, all I had to do was go to the source material. And instead of a lot of those books, right, where someone comes in and they do 10 hours of interviews and then they let someone else walk away and have to construct this world of prose that is never going to sound like they're in their shoes, I really felt like a glorified recording secretary, but what I did find was artistically really awesome was I did find myself, and thank you for mentioning the prologue, because I would sit there and I'd go, I was so used to starting the book off with the Soledad prison riots, but I'm like, there's a more poetic way to come into the story. And I remember Danny telling me about Blackie dying and why Mary Carmen's named Muddacat and the uncles coming in. And I'm like, that's it. It's a poem, and he's told me these poems.
So much. You know what it's like? It's like the wedding. It's like the wedding of the Godfather at the very beginning, right? All the family dynamics in that one thing. You have prayer twice. You have Danny praying on his knees twice that day, right? You have the very religious home. You have the death of the dog. You have him burying the dog. You have the family, the violence at the end, and the grandmother coming to putting them all down to pray for the family. Like it is so tight, and it's so tight. It happens in a page and a half, or like 2 pages maybe. I forget. One of the things I want to say is, you said that you listened to the tapes of Danny, and the reason I could hear Danny is it reminds me of the psalmist, King David, who wrote, "Thy words have I hid in my heart that I might not sin against thee." It's like you didn't want to sin against his voice, and you said, "I need to get the voice in my head. I need to hold it," because you captured it, man. You like your dance between each other, the co-writing thing. It's brilliant. It does not feel, and like I said, this is like, I even wrote something somewhere like there needs to be a master class on how you wrote his voice, because you were chanting. Like, it felt like you got out of the way. It was seamless. I was just listening to Danny.
And by the way, Joe, it wasn't always like that, right? Like the early stabs, sometimes it would be like, and this was a mistake that I think Danny, right, ran into with other writers. Some guy would come in and be like, I'm a tough guy too, so we're doing tough guy talk. And you could just immediately go, oh no, it rings false. And I do think that a couple of cosmic things, but one thing that was really weird was because I had grown up on the border, and I'm not trying to say that my life was similar to Danny's at all. We had those different trajectories, but I was like, in my whole life down there, I was loitering with great intent. You know what I mean? So in a way, it was there's kind of a shorthand between us. I don't know if it was 100% necessary, but it seemed, even in the way we became friends, it seemed to always help. And there's not much of a barrier between Danny and I in any way. Because of our friendship. But I also had a lot to prove, because I think when the publishing house said, man, of course we want to do Danny Trejo's life story, but why the hell are we picking up his actor buddy? You know, and so it took a lot of extra work just for me, out of my own fear, to be like, I want you to believe, I want you to know that you made a good decision. And, but what a joy it was working on.
It was great. I also think, Danny, like you were saying, you want to be honest about the things that happen in your family as a young man, your mom and your dad. If you don't put those things in there, then you lose the thread of certain illuminations at the end, right? When you're able to, you make this really fascinating observation about how when you start acting, you realize, I've been acting all my life. You know, like, you are a tough guy, but you knew that in order to survive in some places, you had to like perform. Like, maleness is a performance. We learned that. You learn how to act a certain way, and you carry yourself a certain way. Listen, I walked in 30 banks. I never showed a gun. I acted really, really menacing. You know, like, I know how to perform that menace. You know, so like, we know maleness is menacing, and we know maleness is performance. And then you are able to track it, how you had learned that growing up from your dad and other things in the family. The misogyny, the way you track misogyny, and you bring it to all the stories of your mother. I don't even want to get into the stories of your mother. It's such a powerful, I want the reader to discover what you discover and the timing of that. But if you don't tell that story of your mother, then we don't get all you being able to meditate on the origin of your misogyny and the way you treat all those women, like you said, like, they were part of your story. They had to be part. And so it was smart to get them in there. Another smart thing, and I don't think it was even a choice, thing that I loved about it, one of my favorite quotes was writer Flannery O'Connor. She said, the maximum amount of seriousness admits the maximum amount of comedy. And one thing I knew of being in prison, I laughed my ass off. Some of the killers I knew were some of the funniest guys I knew. Very clever, and I was talking to a writer the other day, and I was telling him some of the funniest lines I remember from prison that I got from really violent men, right? And the thing about this book is, it's so funny, it's so witty, that you do this seamless thing where you talk about something super violent, and then the next man, the dark humor kicks in, right? And I think that I think Mexicans have that I do want to believe that it's a big thing in the community. We like to laugh, but in prisoners in general, I found that when I was coming out and guys knew I was going to write, they were like, hey, Joe, write us funny. We laugh in here. Like, a lot of people try to pretend like we don't, like, we are 30 banks, stab men, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, we have that, but we also we like to laugh, right? So like, I feel like that humor was really, really an essential part of this. How did you feel about that, Danny, when you were thinking? Right?
You know, absolutely. It's funny. It's like when Tyrone stabbed that guy, and we came out of a block, and we started. I mean, it was like a hysterical laugh when he said, "I think he got me. I think he got me," and it was like they were like, "Oh," it was like, I mean, we were just like busting laughing, and it's like, you know, the gun tower starts looking at you. It's like, that means that you're doing something now. And we were like belly laughing. And so this is the kind of stuff that you have to laugh at. You know, you have to find humor in everything in prison, or you'll go crazy. You know, it's like you see guys diving off a tier because they got a letter or something, you know, and you have to like, what that sound like? Oh, watermelon. And everybody starts yelling what it sounds. And it's I mean, now it's like, when I think about it, it almost chokes me up to think that you can become that kind of person, you know, but you know, that's what keeps you to your kind of insane instead of their kind of insane. You know what I mean? You go crazy to keep them from making you crazy.
It's a survival technique, and we have to survive that. And we can't be mad at ourselves because we were put in a situation that we had to survive, and our technique to survive was to laugh at some insane shit. And the good thing too in here is you're not afraid to laugh at yourself, or you're not afraid to put yourself. There's this. I remember when I was in the hole. And it was the bars, like, you know, the cells had bars. Some of the holes had, you know, it was just a door with a little food tray. but these were bars, and it was a Lompoc. And I remember one of my homeboys got some food down the way for canteen. And I was like, hey man, send some chips down. The way they would do it, they put it in an envelope and they'd pass it down the bar, whatever, right? And so I remember him, he was like, he said, okay, man, I sent it, they'll be there any second. So I'm waiting in my cell and they never come. So I'm like, hey, Santos, they never came. He goes, they never came? Wait by the bars, they're coming. And I just kept waiting. And I was like, hey, Santos. And he's like, hey, they're coming, man. Wait by the bar. They're never coming, right? So what's funny is, like for the next day, all the other Chicanos on the tier would be like, hey, Santos, did my chips come yet? They started me, right? Hey, Santos, you sure you sent them? I didn't get them yet. And there's a scene in where you're in I think you were in the hole. Yeah, you got put in the hole and some guy gets shot and you yell out, they shot him. And then everyone started mocking you. They shot him, they shot him.
Yeah, they were like,
I love these scenes where you are able to make fun of yourself, laugh at yourself, right? And I think that's another thing. You're not just trying to present yourself, hey, look at what a tough guy. You're able to really tell about all the wildness of that place, the humor, the tragedies, the graces. There's moments of grace, right?
Everybody, I mean, if you can imagine the whole B section laughing at you and making somebody getting shot funny. You know what I mean? Because it became funny, Oh my God, he shot him. Because then, of course, they went, oh, ay, Dios mío, cuidado, mataron. And so,
it's funny.
So even I was laughing.
But I do like the way you, there's a lot of parts of your life. You have to go through a lot of it. And prison is a section of it. But the important part of the prison, which I love, is that you don't overdo it. You don't overdo it. In fact, the prison scenes are all here for important effect. I felt like when I came out of prison, one of the things that people would say was like, I can't imagine you doing anything bad. You're such a nice guy. And it always actually made me feel alienated from people because I felt like if you don't know how bad I've been, then you can't see how hard I work to become the guy in front of you you feel safe with, right? And I love the part of the book where you do show us how the squalor, how low you go. And you keep referencing that so we can really track all the ways in which you're trying to move on. We really can track the entire spiritual journey to the end. Right.
The thing I always say is that you're only as sick as your secrets. And it doesn't matter when you got all that stuff inside you and somebody says, God, I can't imagine I can't imagine you hurting any. And you think, my God, if they only knew. And it's almost like a secret, and it's like until Donal let me free it, or unbury it. It was like, and today is like, I almost feel cleansed. Like, I got no secret. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's just like a great feeling.
What's really surprising? What's surprising to me about that is like, what's the beauty of it is like, my grandfather was an alcoholic till he was 69 and he alienated his family. He lost the family. He brutalized the family, all this stuff, right? Are you asking for nachos?
No. I'm telling my Mikey to go ahead and eat.
Okay. But my grandfather changed his life at 69. And then for the last 5 years, he was able to figure out a way to get to his kids and start telling them he loved them at the end of his life, right? And I was in prison when this happened. And I remember thinking, man, my grandfather changed at 69. I could change. I could change. He made it possible, right? One of the wonderful things about the story is you changed a long time ago, but you've been changing. And you've been having these illuminations that led to the next illumination. And so you coming to this point in your life where you're able to now share the story about your mother, which is it's a powerful, dark, a very complicated and twisted, psychologically twisted story with the effect and impact. And for you to be able to unpack that for us it shows you like, we're never done, right? The spiritual journey isn't, you don't reach a plateau. You get there and then you have steps to the next one and you make that step. And like, I really enjoyed seeing this.
it's almost like learning. When a man stops learning, he becomes ignorant. You know what I mean? It's like we learn something, make a point to learn something every day. And it's like, for me, it's like my whole journey is helping other people. And that way I keep, I keep learning. I keep finding out. I keep going out what's going on. And everybody that's around me, it's like, we want to keep learning. We want to keep getting better.
It's one of the points of, well, there's a point in the story where you talk, I mean, there's a lot of interesting intersections you have with actors. Of course, people are going to love to go to the parts about you having conversations with De Niro, your conversation with Dennis Hopper, your friendship with Dennis Hopper, your friendship with Robert Rodriguez. There's just, there's a lot of that good, fun, Hollywood, interesting stuff, the way you come up, the way you break through, Machete, Heat, all that stuff is really exciting. But what I really like is the parts where you talk about your memories of people who were innocent, like the innocents in prison, right? Like Charlie, the guy you helped. Can you tell me a story of Charlie really quick for the listeners?
Well, it was funny because when he came into the county jail, it was before anything had happened. Nobody knew who he was. He was just a dirty little hippie. I mean, it wasn't. He didn't even have a belt. He had a string. He had tied a string, and in jail, especially the Mexicans, it's like, we iron our clothes, we iron our shirts, and they, they were really about ready to take advantage of him, and we found out he could hypnotize people, so we put him in front of our cell. You could sleep in front of our cell. And there was everybody else had 6 people in the cell, me and Tacho and who was it? Oh God, I forget. One other kid, Rudy, I think. There was 3 of us.
So you let young Charlie sleep in front of your cell.
Yeah, and I had him hypnotize us on weed, and the 3 of us got loaded on weed. And I mean, literally loaded. We got the munchies. We were, like laughing and
he made you believe you were high on weed.
On weed, absolutely. And so the minute he brought us down, I said, "Hey, wait a minute. Can you get us loaded on heroin?" He goes, "Yeah." So he got us loaded, he did the whole thing again. 2 of us got loaded on heroin. The other guy just woke up. And when we were all done, I asked Charlie, how come he didn't get loaded? And he asked, have you ever been loaded on heroin? He goes, no. His mind didn't know how to react. You understand? So it showed me that, you mean drugs there's just like a mind thing. I can get, and you can actually, I said, Charlie, could somebody have a habit with you hypnotizing somebody every day, they were loaded on heroin, could they become addicted? Says they would absolutely become addicted, but their mind knew that if they didn't get it, they were going to get sick and they would start getting sick. And later on in life, when I was in Vacaville, there was a guy that was always, he would come up, and the guy hadn't fixed in 16 years. And he would come up, hey, you got anything? Oh, I'm getting sick. Oh, you got anything? And, he was always getting sick. And he wasn't even using.
Like he was strung out.
But you know what? So I thought, wow, it's like this is all. But anyway, Charlie got us loaded on heroin. That one guy wouldn't. And then I think 2 days later they pulled him out, or a day, they pulled him out for whatever reason. I didn't really get to know him other than he was. But then when we found out what was going on, when we used to hear him, guys that I knew, when we were hear him talking in Vacaville about how tough and I think we was like, this is fun. Are you kidding? But you got to remember, here's a guy they kept in PC. protective custody, because not because he was so tough, but because he was a threat. I don't know how to say it.
He was a threat. He was a threat to the prison.
Well, no, to
disrupting the prison.
Them finding him dead. I mean,
right.
Because it was
several times, yeah.
And so anybody can be tough in protective custody.
Hey, Joe, we mentioned this before we started, right? That this is a weird thing, but Danny, it dovetails a little bit into the conversation with San Francisco and what we find endlessly fascinating about the city. And, the hardest times that Danny did in San Quentin, and, like the most beautiful city in the world and the hardest prisons right there. But that Manson, right? Danny, you said that Manson, that the family started in Haight-Ashbury wasn't a surprise to you, right?
Well, love. The thing was that those girls, like Manson couldn't have done that in East Los Angeles, or he couldn't have done that in Compton. You know what I mean? They'd have pimped him. I mean, it's that simple. It's like there's different kind. He met some very broken little girls that had run away from Bogalusa, Louisiana, and showed up in Haight-Ashbury. They were being abused.
Yeah.
A lot of those little girls were being abused, were being run by the pimps. So when Manson showed up with drugs in a bus, come on, I'll take you to the promised land. They followed him, and they literally, you're like, the connection is basically your guru. If you're strung out on heroin, acid, whatever you're strung out, the connection is a guru, and he was the connection.
He was a connect. He was a connect, man. It's one of the things that really, you have this concept of the right now. When you were in prison, you can't think about the future. Like I tell people, you cannot have a calendar on the wall, because time
right now.
You can't do that. You have to keep it off. You can't worry about, you got to do every day. You got to do, and you can't worry about the past, what you had in the past, or the money you had, whatever. You got to be that. And I never heard anyone call it the right now.
Yeah, the right now.
Which I really, really like. Now, when I thought about that, that's a spiritual concept. It's a way, like, it's almost a Buddhist kind of like, just be present, right? Be mindful about where you are right now. So I love that. Now, my question to you is, like, when you got out, did you ever find yourself like anxious about things and like, oh, what am I going to do there? And my past is catching up, and am I going to fuck up like I did in the past? Did you ever center yourself in the right now when you came out of prison? Did you ever find an opportunity?
I got to tell you this. The God's honest truth. I thank God I had people around me that, like what Donal Logue has turned into, people that have my back no matter what, and would say, hey, what's wrong? Would immediately know, you have that support system. And through this program, it's like, it was a day at a time. It was a day at a time. I know how to do that. That's what I've been doing. And Quentin is not only a day at a time, it's a right now. I mean, you could die right now. And you can die because some guy you didn't even know didn't get a letter. You know what I mean? And just decided to stab you. So when you're in that situation of right now, a day at a time is a lot better. I'm out here, I got a day, I got all day, I don't care, I'm cool. So it was so much more relaxing to be out here working this program as a day. I got a day. I don't know, maybe I'll get shot tomorrow, who cares? Or the past is gone. The past is gone. I'm right now, and I'm in today. And that's the way I still live. I still live today. Honest to God, my assistants, because it takes 4 people to run my life, but my assistants, hey, you got this today. I had, that's a secret, Gilbert, what we did yesterday. Yeah, okay. I had this really important, this big meeting yesterday. I mean, it was like something that you should prepare for like a week in advance. But my guys know better. They said, you got to do this today. You know, really? Why didn't somebody do it? Because we know you. and it worked out great. You know.
I do know that there was a moment where you went to the Notre Dame in Paris, and you know, we've been hearing about the right now. You're living on every day at a time, one day at a time. You're doing the program, you're doing good, and then you get to the cathedral. And what happened? It wasn't the right now. What happened?
It was like knocked me for a loop. I could not, like seeing one of my best friends, my old friend, and the guy who kept asking, what's wrong? And I told him, it was unbelievable. He's like, you know what? When I found out it was on fire, when they told me, I almost cried. It was, I couldn't believe it. I was like, man, this thing, I mean, it was unbelievable, you know, that this, you know, that anybody could let this happen. I couldn't believe it. But Notre Dame was, at first I thought it was in Rome, you know, because I didn't know the French Revolution. I just knew the movie was great, you know, and it was Charles Lawton. He was awesome. They gave me water. I mean, I used to run. I would get on the bars, sanctuary, sanctuary.
Love that. No, but I love when you went in there and you said, you know what, this isn't the right now, this is the forever. Like you felt the magnificence of that place, because it is. You get in there, those cathedrals make you feel small. They're like being in the redwoods, right? Like you realize these giant, this is what magnificence and awe is.
Last week I was in Rome. You know, I was in Rome. I did a film in Rome, and I went into the cathedral. You know, and it was just, you're so right. It is so magnificent, and it's like forever. It's just like goes on. And they took me on a special tour downstairs and seen all the popes, and it's amazing how minuscule. That's one of Donald's work. We are, you know, I mean, we really like, wow, we're just this little thing.
Tiny. That's how I get when I go to the redwoods. I love to be in the redwoods.
Oh man, talking about forest
avenue of giants.
God, hey, you know what? When we were fighting fires, and I came across and I seen one of them, and God, I was like 16 years old, man, and it's like that's when you're like, God, I'm nothing, thank you, you know, and because you realize this thing's been here forever, you know, as well.
I have a couple of things I want to say. I want to get to the fires, but first I want to talk about an interesting relationship that I have to you. I know so many people who have shown me photos with you and them at car shows, like it's so weird how many people you're like, they want to take photos with you, right? And I'm talking all walks of life. I have ex-cons, I have professors at Davis, like they just bump into your place and people take photos. I told somebody I was going to do this the other day, just a woman who knew me since I was 13 in Burbank. And she says, hey, remember my best friend Penny from high school? And I go, yeah. She goes, Penny was related to him. Penny has a photo of him. And I said, what? You were married to her sister-in-law? So I don't know, but it was so fun. Like everybody has photos of you, man. She sent me a photo. It's historical that like, and all this, as you move through the world, people just love busting flicks with you, man. I kind of love that. I know so many people who have, like nobody else who I know has photos of anybody but you. But I want to go back to the fire because you fought fires at fire camp and you were Dean's crew. You guys were this particular crew of youngsters who were competitive about fighting the fires and just, you know, youngsters with all the energy, and you get recognized and all that stuff. And then you make this point, this is one of the poetic things that I really give this book literary kudos to. There's these metaphors that carry through the book. There's these moments where you tell us something early and then you bring it back and you call back to it later on, right? One of them is the fires. You fought the fires. And then later on, you talk about how fighting those fires allowed you to think about how you fought the fire in you and how you helped other people fight the fires in them. I love that notion.
You know, it's so funny. It's like fighting fires actually gives you a feeling of self-worth. You know, they took the intellectual Mexicans, the intellectual African Americans, took those out of the juvenile justice system because they said it was unusual punishment. I mean, cruel and unusual punishment or something, right?
By fires.
Yeah, getting puts to work. And I think it was stupid, you know, because it gave us, I can remember fighting a fire and people coming out screaming, yo, please, please, and us building a fire break and them almost wanting to kiss us, right? I can remember fighting a flood on the Sacramento River and these people coming out, it's 2:00 in the morning and we're building a dike and ladies, old grandmothers would come out with thermoses of coffee and please, you want some coffee? You want some? And then they'd wink. You know, like
you got a little vodka on it or something.
Whoa, you know, and it was, that's fine. That's so. But it gave us a feeling of self-worth, and yet, but the college in Mexicans, no, this is teaching them to do manual labor. Some of us had to do manual labor.
Yeah, that's what gave you fulfillment.
And it's like they took the shops, they took the all the stuff out of schools, you know, and it's like, wait a minute, there's some of us that love to work with our hands.
That's right.
You know, all of us aren't going to be college professors. And so it was like, God, I mean, I think it was the dumbest thing that the Department of Education's ever done.
Yeah, no, I think so too. But I do think that you tracking it later to thinking about how all that was done in the fires, then you got into people's lives and, you know, they were torching up their lives sometimes and you have to help them. You'd have to go put the fires out in their life, including your own life, you know, and you recognize how you were still fighting the fires of your own life, putting out fires in your own life, which is,
I think what Donald did, you know, with my life, it's like he put my life in my words, you know, and I think you know, I thought there was just what do you call it? A beginning, a middle, and an end, and you know, he followed stuff through, and we would stuff, and he go, okay, well, hold it, we got that. We'll go back to that, and then we'd boom, and then we'd go back to that here. And it was like, you know, when I read the book, I liked it, and it was like me talking, you know what I mean? And it was me talking to myself, you know.
And Joe, it was such a team effort, you know. If Gilbert's there,
Gilbert's here.
Gilbert is so brilliant and a storyteller in his own right, you know, Gilbert, Danny's son, and Gilbert would always be like this confidant who could provide. You know, we'd have these sidebar conversations because what you're trying to find is the third rail that drives someone right, of the story. And Gilbert would always drop these great things on me about, like, you know, my dad trained to be an actor since he was a baby, trained to be that things were, and it was just so fascinating that there was so much awesome input into the story. Mario helped so much too. Yeah. You know, and Danny gives me way too much credit, and I love hearing it because he's so generous of spirit, but it was all from him. But what I do think that was fun, Danny, sometimes is the metaphors you're talking about, Joe, is like, sometimes we would stumble upon them in conversation later and go, whoa. And some of them can be more veiled, like firefighting, or some could be so direct, like he'd be talking and I'm like, Danny, you lived in Lassen and Soledad.
Oh yeah.
why did you buy a house on that street? You know what I mean? Or like, whoa. Every time he would mention a car, I'd be like, you've got that car in your garage. Be like, oh yeah, I remember the feds busted me and they kicked my ass. It was a 65 blue Buick Riviera, brand new, tan carpet. And I'm like, you mean the 65 Riviera you have in your garage, blue? And he'd be like, whoa.
Yeah.
How we discover that psychologically.
I never realized it. I never realized it.
Yeah.
You know, that was so true. You know what? My grandfather had a 42 Chevy.
Wasn't it the 38 Chevy that you wanted to buy from?
From I'm sorry, yeah, 30 from
Ronnie.
Ronnie, but
Yeah.
from Ronnie, yeah. God, man, Ronnie Hernandez. I was gonna buy it, and that's the one that Debbie.
Yeah. So one of the things I loved about it, and I had a question for you. So yeah, I understand it's a group effort, and I understand it's Danny's story. Don't get me wrong, but even Danny confessed in the book, the only book he's read, that, and you know, I know it is an exaggeration, but he's like, the only book I ever read was Archie, you know, like Archie comics, right? But true,
that wasn't an exaggeration.
Okay, so all right. Well, either way, the point is that when I was reading this, I got a really strong hit. Some parts of it, I got a strong hit of Tom Wolfe, and I wondered, have you read much Tom Wolfe, Donald?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, I felt like I know you read Kerouac, and I know you know that, but there were some moments where it was Danny's voice, but the voice and the style, the feel of being in the streets, walking the tier, even the way you guys described certain stories taking place. I felt like I was in a Tom Wolfe.
Oh man,
Tom Wolfe.
It was masterful.
But you know, like, and I'm sure this was the case with you too, right? Like, one of the greatest trainings, of course, when you're writing is you've got to continually read. You always have to read, and you get all these, you know, as artistically, we're looking for inspiration from everywhere. And I love those writers who, they weren't overly muscular about the use of prose. They didn't get to, you know, when I was younger and trying to write, I would read something and I'd go, man, I'm reading this thing and I'm like, this casual dude who's like a dude like us is looking out the window of a train and somehow he knows the scientific name to every tree. And I'm like, that ain't real, you know. And it's how to be like, you have to show some prose muscularity, but not go overboard, or, you know, that's its own weird dance. Is we got the nuts and bolts of the story down. And by the way, there's a ton that I'm sure like you had to leave out.
Of course.
That was tough. And then it was like, okay, now there's a real poetic game of making this stuff sing in terms of prose, you know, because I think Danny's life is so remarkable that it would have been just such a bummer if the book wasn't deserved of, you know, the life that if it didn't do justice to the kind of life he's led. And that was the game, but I appreciate it. Thanks. I mean, we're so proud of it. I mean, I know creatively, for me, by far and away, this was the most satisfying endeavor I've ever taken part in.
The good thing too is you guys are storytellers, but you guys have also been telling stories that feed the masses, which are movies, right? So like, right. You guys had good, you know, good feel for drama. You have good feel for pacing. The book is just, you know, it's an easy read, which isn't to say it's a simple book. Actually, one of the challenges that a lot of writers have is how to play with, you know, how to make a book non-linear. And you guys, because people can get lost on if you're doing.
But by the way, and Joe, I had unbelievable help with that. Full disclosure, there's a friend of mine named Hillary Lifton, brilliant literary mind, brilliant writer, and just dug in with me. That was who was reading the manuscript all the time. And just when there were times when I'm like, Hillary, I don't, no, I'm in the weeds, you know?
Yeah.
And she would say like the big secret that's revealed about Danny's mom, she's like, hold back on that. Just trust.
Yes.
Go 4 steps deeper than you think you need to go, and then drop it in. And then it's this, and some people have that kind of mind that can step back from a jigsaw puzzle and see where the deficiencies are. But sometimes when you're in the middle of those 2,000 pages, you're so lost in the weeds. And you know, and also the editor, Michelle Herrera Mulligan, she could have easily said, listen, we bought a Hollywood memoir. You know, skip past the Uncle Gilbert stuff, get through the prison stuff, and let's get into Hollywood parties and stuff. And that wasn't what she did at all. She drove us to write the book that we wanted to write.
Well, you knew that's Danny. You wrote the book that's Danny, which Danny's ministerial. Danny ministers to people.
I love that you say that.
Danny's whole life was help. He heard God say, help. And help is what this book is about. It's about showing all the ways in which people helped him. It's about showing all the ways in which he helped people. One of the best parts of the story is finding all the moments or tracking all the moments in which Danny says, I did this, and then I took myself out of it. I just gave. And then boom, something brilliant opens up, right? Like when you did the lawn of that woman who wouldn't come out of the house, you did it for free. And you did her lawn, but then somebody saw you doing it, came over, asked you about it, and that opened up a new opportunity for your business, right? Like
everything good that has happened to me, Joe, everything good that has happened to me has happened as a direct result of helping someone else. Everything.
And that's what this story is. It's you. It's you. In that way, the faith-based aspect of it, the way in which you really talk about your faith in God, and how even though these stories are rooted in blood and violence, I mean, in many ways, it's like the beginning of the Bible. You know, like the first two books of the Bible, if you squeeze them, blood drips out of them, man. I mean, they're just bloody. Everybody's getting killed, and every sin is being committed. So, I mean, it has that real strong, there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of terrible things, a lot of trauma and squalor, but the faith throughout, and then the belief, and then the working through helping people in recovery and rescuing people, you know, it's powerful. I have one last question. And then the last 2 questions will be really super kind of fun. In Heat, you did mention this moment where Robert De Niro comes to you when you're dying. You're really observing how he does his acting. You're growing here. It's a really beautiful scene in the book where he comes to you and says, how do you want to play this at the end? You're like, how do you want to play Bob? Or how do you want to play? I don't remember. I think you call him Bob, right?
Call him Bob.
Bob, which is that's also the thing. Like you're so into these people. You're talking their way. I would call him Mr. De Niro. I don't know.
I just felt like, you know,
yeah.
this is my moment. You know, he's asking me something. What do you think?
When he gives you the prompts of how you should play that, right? You later, after the fact, say that in some ways you were holding space there for other people who had gone out. And I wonder, in that moment though, did you draw from anybody that you knew who had died, like were at that moment of death, or did you? How did you? I'm curious, as a person who has seen a lot of people do a lot of things, you draw from that, and you also draw from your own experience. In that moment, were you channeling any other guy that you knew who was on their deathbed? Because you know, at that point, you'd known a lot of people who had died.
I think what I tried to do was just channel death. I've seen people die. You know, I've seen people, you know, die right in front of me. You know, just they give that little, you know, it's kind of and you never forget that. You know, you just kind of never forget that, and it's an exhale. And I remember when he said, I asked him. I asked him, where's Diana? And he said, she's dead. And I remember going, and I was going to die right there. Then he asked me something else, you know, and so I was kind of, okay, not yet, you know, and then I was just begging him to kill me. You know, that's where I was going to start begging him to kill me right then. But then he asked me something else, and who did it? You know, Wayne, you know, and so it was one of the iconic scene of that movie, and
it's just a powerful scene. You know, I was in Baby Driver. I helped consulted on that movie for the bank robbers and stuff. And then Edgar Wright gave me a lovely role at the end. He lets me get killed by Jamie Foxx at the very end. I play a bank guard, ironically, a bank robber playing a bank guard, right? And I die, and it was nowhere near true. I just get shot and fucking fall, right? But it was, you know, it's funny to be able to, like, there's another word in which I haven't been killed 400 times on, you know, like you were 70, whatever, right? But, you know, it's the one thing we have in common. I'm going to ask you.
I have to watch Baby Driver again, man.
You'll see me at the end. Big heavy guy walking in, all busy. Night. What are you doing in the car? And then I turn around and they walk out of the post office, that last robbery, and then I get blasted. All right, so I'm going to ask you. These are just fun questions. I ask people these questions. I've been asking my daughter these questions about her and her friends because it's a different kind of question, right? So. This is a question to both of you. If you were a time of day, what time of day would you be? If you were a time, you morning, noon, late afternoon, evening.
I think 3:42 a.m.
What is it?
You're up all night writing.
Yeah. I wake up at around 3 or 4 in the morning. So wow. I'm with you, but you'd say 3 a.m.?
Yeah, because I used to push it so late all my life. And it was that, you know, cops would tell me too that was the time of day where it's getting a little late for people to pull criminal. It's a little too early even for the early birds, except for you, of course. But I would, you know, even as a kid, I just was up all night. I'd grab a skateboard and I'd go around El Centro and I'd be in Winchell's Donuts at 3 a.m, you know, talking to some guys. And
damn, now I want a Winchell's Donuts, man. Thank you.
now Trejo's Donuts, I should say.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I haven't even had those yet. Danny, tell me if you were.
I have them. Where are you at? Where are you at? Where are you at?
I'm in LA often, but I'm in right next to Oakland, a place called San Leandro.
Call me when I love Oakland. Let me tell you, we got Oakland Al Salas, who a good friend, he passed away, and George Perry was a pimp up in San Francisco.
yeah.
I both love them both, my best friends. But Al
goes on La Brea. I've eaten your tacos.
All right, cool. That's good.
Right
anytime, call me. But my favorite time of the day now is really about 6:30 in the evening, when I just kind of like sit outside and in my backyard and just kind of like thank God and just thank, you know.
Okay, good. I'm going to ask you one last question, just like this, and then we're gone. If you were a sandwich, what kind of sandwich would you be?
Something from Jersey Mike's, no.
If you were a sandwich, what kind of sandwich would you be, Donald?
Peanut butter and jelly, man. It will never be beaten.
That's a good one. On wheat bread, white bread.
Pastrami, I eat pastrami.
You know, yeah, I would say, I guess wheat bread because we got healthier, right? But yeah. I was just doing I'd gotten away for it for so long for some crazy reason. And I was up doing a logging job up in Oregon. And my partner, this guy, Raul, he's like, break time, need the calories. And he'd sit down and bust out with these PB&J sandwiches that his girlfriend had made him. And I was like, why have I denied myself the absolute, dude, I would take a peanut butter and jelly sandwich at the right time of day over a $220 steak in a restaurant, you know?
Wait, did you say pastrami?
Danny? I love pastrami.
Better have pastrami for lunch. Yeah. There it is there, man. Another thing we have in common, man. Hey, listen, guys, the book is brilliant. I want everyone to go and read it for a bunch of reasons. You guys are really smart about telling the story. Danny, your story is a fantastic, inspiring story. And not like, oh man, you changed your life, it's inspiring. But really, the way you learn things at pivotal points, and you use that for locomotion to move forward. I think a lot of us out here who are always struggling with different areas of our lives, the fact that you have kept and are still growing, that's inspiring, man. I love this story. I love the book, and I wish you guys amazing success with it. Thank you.
And thank you, Joe. You're brilliant. Thank you to Hunter and everybody, and thank you to the San Francisco Lit Fest, and we love that city so much. But I can't. Right when we end right now, Amazon getting your book.
Okay. All right. I'll tell you what. Go to my website, Joe Loya.
Better, right? Better.
LTD, and I'll send you a signed copy of it.
God bless.
You order it there.
Send us two. Get one for me. God bless.
Right, thanks so much, man. You guys take care.
Thank you so much.
All right, guys. Bye.
Oh, and Jack too. Thank you, Jack.
Jack, sorry.
Jack, thank you.
You there?
I am here. Thank you guys so much. We appreciate your appearance here. It was like gripping, man, and hilarious at the same time. And that's all you can do, right? That's all you can do. Thank you everyone for watching. Don't forget to go buy Trejo, the book by Danny and Donal at Marcus Books in Oakland, California. They have signed copies there, but don't delay, do it. And the Litquake Festival will continue through October 23rd. The details are at litquake.org. Thank you all.